Hi, in the previous video I mentioned about accounting for property, plant and equipment. In this video I will explain about accounting for intangible assets. Entities frequently expend some resources or incur liabilities on the acquisition, development, maintenance or enhancement of intangible resources such as scientific knowledge or technical knowledge, design and implementation of new process, systems, licenses, intellectual property, etc. The standard IS-38 was issued to account for those intangible resources that generate economic benefits to a company. I'll explain the standard in the approach that is given on the slide. First, I'll explain about history, then objective of the standard, scope, definition, recognition, measurement, de-recognition, and disclosures. Originally, it was IAS 9, Accounting for Research and Development, that was issued to account for intangible assets. That standard was issued in July 1978. Later, that was revised and replaced by IAS 9 Research and Development Cost in December 1993. Then, in September 1998, IAS 38 Intangible Assets was issued. Then, in 2001, IASB adopted IAS 38 as part of IFRS. Then, the standard was revised in 2004 March. After that, the standard was revised. There were some minute amendments in the standard subsequently till last year. The objective of IAS 38 is to prescribe the accounting treatment for intangible assets that are not dealt with specifically in another standard. If no other standard talks about intangible asset, then that is within the scope of the standard. And the standard requires that an entity recognize an intangible asset if it meets the specified criteria that is mentioned in the standard. And the standard also mentions how to measure the intangible asset. And also standard mentions about the disclosure of intangible assets in the financial statements. Scope. This standard is not applicable for intangible assets that are held by an entity for sale in the ordinary course of business. For example, a software company might sell software in CDs. That software may be considered as will be considered as goods. It is not intangible asset. Also, the standard is not applicable for deferred tax assets and leases that are within scope of IAS 17, leases of intangible assets, or assets arising from employee benefits, financial assets, goodwill acquired in business combination, and deferred acquisition costs relating to insurer contractual rights. What is an intangible asset? So, if I say an intangible asset, that means it is an asset. So, an intangible asset is an identifiable non-monetary asset without physical substance. So, the standard mentioned that intangible asset is an identifiable non-monetary asset without physical substance. If you break down this definition, then intangible asset is identifiable. So, it should be identifiable and it is a non-monetary asset and it does not have any physical substance. What is non-monetary asset? To understand what is non-monetary asset, you need to understand what is monetary asset. A monetary asset is money held, that means cash, or assets to be received in fixed or determinable amounts of money. Say, for example, debtors. Debtors, you know how much money they will pay. So, if you can if you can determine how much money debtors will pay, then it is monetary asset. If you know that how much money you will receive from any particular asset, all those assets will be considered as monetary asset. The examples for monetary assets are cash, debtors, fixed deposits with bank, deposits, current deposits in bank. The examples for non-monetary assets are inventory, property, plant and equipment, and intangible assets. Next point is an intangible asset is an identifiable. So, what do you mean by identifiable? How can you identify intangible asset? This standard mentions that intangible assets to be identifiable, it should be distinguished from goodwill. You should be able to separate it from goodwill. If you cannot separate it from goodwill, then it is goodwill. This standard is for intangible assets other than goodwill. So, how do you separate any intangible asset from goodwill? How do you identify any intangible asset from goodwill? An intangible asset is identifiable if it is separable. That means if you can sell if you can transfer, if you can license, rent, or exchange an asset individually without selling the entire business, then you can say that it is an intangible asset. For example, if you want to sell a particular copyright, a particular intangible asset like trademarks, copyright, patents, then you need not sell entire business. You can sell the particular copyright, particular trademark. But take the case of goodwill. You cannot separately sell goodwill. If you want to sell goodwill, you need to sell entire business. You cannot separate goodwill from the business. But for other intangible assets, you can separate it from the entity. By selling any particular intangible asset, the company will not close its business. But if you want to sell goodwill, the company should close its business, or the owner should transfer entire business. In that case, it is goodwill. Also, sometimes management cannot sell it, but the asset arises from legal rights. Even in that case, it will be considered as intangible asset. The common examples of intangible assets are software, patents, copyrights, motion picture films, customer lists, etc. And even to identify an intangible asset, you need to satisfy the control part. You need to satisfy the rule relating to control. You must be able to control the particular item, then only you can call it as asset. So in case of intangible asset, you can control an asset if you can get the power, if you have the power to obtain future benefits from the asset. For example, if the asset is copyright, you may be controlling the copyright by restricting others to use the content of the copyright. Or you can sell the copyright to somebody. By selling, you will receive some money. So that money is future economic benefit. In that way, you are controlling the copyright. So if you can control a particular item, then you can call it as intangible asset. Control normally comes from legal ownership or legal right. Sometimes even without legal rights you can control, but if legal rights are not there, it may be difficult to demonstrate control. The future benefits flowing from an intangible asset may be income from sale of products or services, or even cost savings. Most of the intangible assets may result in cost savings rather than increase in sale of products or service. How to recognize intangible asset? First, it should satisfy the definition part. Once it satisfies the definition part, it should meet the recognition criteria. The recognition criteria mentioned in the standard is that an intangible asset shall be recognized only if it is probable that future economic benefits are expected to flow to the entity, and the cost of the asset can be measured reliably. The recognition criteria that is mentioned in the conceptual framework is similar to this recognition criteria mentioned in the standard. You need to satisfy the two conditions. It is probable that future benefits will flow to the entity from the asset. Probability means more than 50% chance. And you should be able to measure the cost of the asset. If you cannot measure the cost, you cannot recognize it. And the standard says an intangible asset should be initially recognized at cost. The standard has mentioned that there are two types of intangible assets. One that is acquired and another one that is generated internally. So this is similar to fixed assets that is purchased separately and fixed asset that is constructed on our own. So if you acquire any intangible assets, you may acquire it by purchasing it individually, or you may acquire it as part of business combination, or you may acquire it from government in the form of government grant. If you generate an intangible asset internally, you may generate, there are two stages here, research stage and development stage. First one, acquisition. If you acquire an intangible asset, you may acquire it individually. If you acquire it individually, you need to recognize it at cost. Cost in this case is purchase price paid minus trade discounts and any taxes that are non-refundable and other costs that are directly attributable in bringing the asset to the present location. So if you refer to my video on property, plant and equipment, the principle that I mentioned relating to assets that are purchased and how to measure the cost in that case is similar to this here. So if you acquire an asset, purchase price is the cost, any taxes that are paid which are non-refundable should be included in the cost, and the other costs that are directly attributable should be included. If you acquire an intangible asset as part of business combination, that means you may be acquiring other assets. In that case, you need to identify this intangible asset by looking at the definition of the intangible asset. You should be able to identify an intangible asset if you can separate it from goodwill. In this case, if you acquire an intangible asset as part of business combination, IFRS 3 is applicable in this case, and IFRS 3 says you need to recognize the intangible asset at fair value on the date of acquisition, on the date of business combination. If you acquire an intangible asset by way of grant from government, then you may have two options. You have two options here. You can recognize it at nominal amount, or you can recognize both asset and grant at fair value. Then later on you can amortize the intangible asset and transfer grant to profit and loss. If you exchange an intangible asset with another asset, then you need to take the fair value of the consideration given, that is fair value of the asset given up is the cost of the intangible asset. If you cannot measure the fair value of asset given up, then you can take the fair value of the incoming asset. If that is also not available, then you need to take the net book value of the asset given up as cost of the incoming asset. Now I'll talk about internally generated intangible assets. It is sometimes difficult to assess whether internally generated intangible asset qualifies for recognition because it is difficult to identify the future economic benefits from the asset and it is difficult to measure the cost. But if you can do so, then you can recognize it. But the standard has mentioned that there are two phases in recognition of intangible assets. They are research phase and development phase. The principle is that in research phase no intangible asset arises, so there should not be any intangible asset from research phase. But in case of development phase, you can recognize some cost as intangible asset provided you satisfy the following conditions. The project should be technically feasible, and there should be an intention from the management to complete the intangible asset and to sell it subsequently, and management should be able to generate the intangible asset, and management should prove that future economic benefits will flow to the entity by generating the asset, and availability of resources also should be satisfied. The condition that all the resources related to developing this intangible asset should be available to the entity. For example, technical resources, financial resources, all these should be available to generate the asset. And management should be able to measure the cost of the asset. If all these conditions are satisfied, then you can recognize intangible asset. Otherwise, you need to write off the expenses that you incur in the development phase also. But if there is a doubt whether there is an intangible asset, whether the process is in development phase or research phase, if there is a doubt, you should classify it as research phase and write off the expense. But the standard has mentioned that no intangible asset arises from internally generated brands, mastheads, publishing titles, customer list, and items similar in substance, because it is assumed that cost of developing the brand and other assets is equivalent to cost of developing the business. So that is why you should not recognize any internally generated intangible asset. If it is brand, mastheads, publishing titles, etc. But once the conditions related to development phase are satisfied, then you can recognize an asset at cost. So what is cost in this case? In case of development phase, the cost of an intangible asset is cost of materials and services used to generate the asset, cost of employee benefits, salary that you paid for the development for the technical team to develop the intangible asset, fees to register the legal right, for example if it is in the cases of patent, fees that you pay to government to register the patent, and also sometimes you use some computers, laptops to generate any software or any other asset you use to generate this intangible asset. Then the amortization of that asset used should also be a forming part of cost of the intangible asset. Internally generated goodwill should not be recognized as an asset because it is not identifiable resource. The definition part in this case is not satisfied because you cannot separate it from goodwill. So internally generated goodwill should not be recognized. The principles relating to subsequent measurement are similar to that mentioned in the property, plant and equipment. So here you have two options. You can either follow cost model or revaluation model. If you follow cost model, intangible asset should be measured at cost less accumulated amortization and accumulated impairment loss. Under cost model, you need to have three things. You need to find out what is the cost, so that cost you know. Then you need to estimate useful life of the asset. You need to estimate the residual value of the asset. If these three things are known, then you can measure the amortization and you can follow the cost model perfectly. For this purpose, the standard assumes that there are two types of intangible assets: intangible assets with finite useful life and intangible assets with indefinite useful life. Indefinite useful life, it is not infinite. So if you have finite useful life intangible asset, that means its useful life will be limited. So after that there will be no life for the asset. If it is indefinite useful life asset, it means its useful life is not infinite, that means it is not unlimited. Its life will expire at some point of time, but it is indefinite. Right now we don't know at what period of time, at what point of time its useful life will be over. The principle is that if it is finite life, we will amortize it. If it is indefinite life, we will not amortize it. So indefinite life intangible asset is similar to land. Land will normally not be depreciated. Land value most of the time will be appreciated only. So if you have any indefinite useful life intangible asset, then we should not amortize it. But you need to check every year if there is any indication that the useful life has become finite. If it is finite, then you will start amortization, otherwise no. And also every year you need to check it for impairment. So coming to finite useful life asset, you need to estimate the life. The life can be estimated based on the period over which the asset is expected to be available for use by the entity, or number of production units expected to be obtained from the asset. This is similar to that followed in PPE. The next point is residual value. The standard assumes that residual value is zero unless it is backed by some evidence, unless it is supported by some technical evidence that there is a commitment by third party to purchase the asset at the end of its useful life, or there is an active market for the asset and the residual value can be determined by reference to that market, and it is probable that market will exist at the end of asset's life. If you can satisfy these two conditions, any of these two conditions, then you can take residual value more than zero. Otherwise, residual value is assumed to be zero. So if you know these three methods, then if you know these 3 points, then next thing is the method of charging amortization. You can charge method of amortization according to the nature of the asset, according to the benefits that are expected to be produced from using this asset. You can either follow straight line method or any other method, whichever is clearly relevant for that, whichever is relevant for the asset. Revaluation model. Under revaluation model, you take the fair value of the asset at the date of revaluation less any subsequent accumulated amortization and accumulated impairment losses. And if you follow revaluation model, if there is any increase in value or decrease in value, the accounting treatment is similar to that I mentioned in property, plant and equipment. Retirements and disposal, derecognition of an asset. You should derecognize an asset, you should remove an asset from the books on disposal or when no benefits are expected from its use or disposal. The disclosure related to this standard says that you need to disclose the cost of an asset, useful life of an asset. If it is finite, then you can mention the methods of charging amortization. If it is indefinite life, you need to state that fact, and you need to show the support. You need to show the evidence that why that particular asset is an indefinite asset, indefinite useful life asset. One thing I will mention that many companies follow cost model only. No, very few follow revaluation model. In fact, I can say there are no companies that follow revaluation model, because to select revaluation model for an intangible asset, it means that the asset should be having active market. Most of the intangible assets are generated internally, and it can be used only by the company that generates it. So it will not be useful to any other company. So there will not be any market for intangible asset outside. So cost model is mostly relevant for intangible asset. Thank you.